What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. I'm back from vacation. Happy Monday, everybody. I'm refreshed. I'm happy. But as it always happens when I leave, something really important takes place, and I'm not able to report it right away. So let's do this. Last Sunday, Ross Coulthart had quite a day, if you ask me, because we have heard from Bryce Zabel from Need to Know, who is Ross's co-host, that he recorded an episode for Sunday where Ross says a couple of claims that really surprised him and that he disagrees with. And I don't know what I was expecting, but Rod did come out with multiple claims, and not just on Need to Know. He also made some really concerning claims on Reality Check. I'm not sure what's going on with Ross Coulthart. He seems very certain of what he's talking about. The only reason I would think that he's correct in a lot of his assessment is that he has access to direct sources with firsthand knowledge, either somebody from the aerospace industry at a senior level position, or somebody from the administration or previous administrations. But he's really certain about a number of things. The first one being that he thinks that the drones, the ones in New Jersey and other sensitive military installations, are Chinese. And I was surprised to hear that, but here's Ross talking about it right here.
The suggestion that is being put to me is that the Chinese have indeed made a huge advance in electrogravitic technology, and it's taken us by surprise, and that the United States has been caught asleep at the wheel. It was complacently, hubristically thinking that it was way ahead of its foreign adversaries. And in fact, the big show that took place, notably, I know it was reported mainly over New Jersey, I'm increasingly persuaded that the initial show, at least, was in part Chinese. And that what happened was the United States responded with technology of its own to muddy the waters. And so you've had this ridiculous situation where, if you believe it, and this is the implication not only from my Senator Mike Roun's interview, but also from the interview that General Glenn Van Herk, the former head of Northcom and NORAD, did to 60 Minutes Bill Whitaker.
I suppose that whatever made Ross convinced of a lot of what he said right here was his conversation with Senator Rounds, because you got to understand the position that Rounds is in. He's in the Armed Services Committee and in the Intel Committee. So he basically and virtually should have access to everything, and he doesn't. And something that Ross did mention here that I'm not going to show in a different segment is that he now knows that Congress is aware that they're being played by either the DOD or the aerospace companies or the DOE or all of the above. But people in Congress already know that they're being lied to. So that is important. But this about the drones coming from China, if you guys don't remember, is something that Matthew Livelsberger, the man who exploded himself inside a Tesla truck right outside of a Trump hotel, he said in his manifesto that the drones were Chinese and that they used gravitic technology. So presumably Ross is on the same boat as Livelsberger now. And this is one of the main debates right now, that there's a lot of people that are more sympathetic towards the United States government that claim that it's impossible that we have cracked anything, and that it's impossible that China is more advanced than the US. Even some of them get really, really offended, especially the ones that have a past in the intel community or in the military, because in my opinion, they grew with this culture of adversarialism against the other countries that could be considered a direct adversary, like the Soviet Union, then Russia, and then China, you know. So I don't know if they have a certain bias against anything that comes out with China, and that prevents them from looking at the reality. The reality right now is that, yeah, China is a communist country, but they are extremely advanced technologically. Whoever wants to come on board and say that China hasn't advanced technologically and there's nothing to worry about with them, that's just not real. That's just not true. It's, you just got to look at all the industry that China is a part of right now and how much they have been advancing over the last decade or so. And I don't care really about China, to be honest with you. I'm Mexican. You guys are my neighbors. I like a lot of Americans. I don't have that many Chinese friends. I'm just telling it like I see it. And what I see is that China is very advanced technologically in many ways. I don't know if this is one of the areas, but they definitely are. And people should not underestimate a country like China. And Ross sounded the alarm because of the interview he had with Rounds and the interview that he saw on 60 Minutes with one of the NORAD generals admitting publicly that they are not able to track, identify, or know what type of technology these drones have. That's a public admission. That's a huge deal. And that's something that Ross obviously caught up with. And now he thinks that the Chinese are the ones sending those drones. And the main issue here, and we haven't even gotten into the NHI aspect of it, but the main issue here is that these drones have been operating on American airspace with impunity for many years now. So what's going on? I'm not sure. The thing is, I don't know if the ones from, for example, the 60s incidents at the nuclear facilities and these drones from New Jersey, I don't know if they're connected in any way. I don't think so. They don't even look similar, to be honest with you. And yeah, the ones in New Jersey looked mechanical, meaning probably human made. Whether they have technology that's derived from crash retrievals, I don't know. It's possible, but I don't know. That's one.
A few months ago, they basically admitted that there's someone operating with impunity over the continental United States, flying so-called drone technology. These drones are not using known propulsion systems. They're not using jets. They're not using propellers. They're not using any kind of known turbine propulsion system that emits the kind of heat that we're used to from that kind of technology. The suggestion is they're using some type of electrogravitics. And my sources are telling me that the big story that, frankly, the US doesn't want you to know about right now, the story that's not being discussed in the media, is the implications of the admissions made by General Glenn Van Herk, in particular, to 60 Minutes, which kind of went through the gate and were largely ignored by most other media, but which I think are incredibly significant.
I agree with Ross there. Yeah, it's a problem that people don't realize that they have to look at the advancements that have been made from other countries. And you have to assume that these crash retrievals have been happening all around the world. The US is not the only one that has been trying to retrieve them. And I would bet you money that either China or Russia have already retrieved some, if that is happening. Because I say that because I just want to remind you guys of something that a little someone very known in the community has been saying for 30 years, just so you know. And yeah, you're going to give a lot of shit to this, but I don't care. This is the reality. Dr. Stephen Greer was with Jesse Michaels a few months ago, and he told him that the Tic-Tac is technology made by Lockheed Martin, Skunk Works, and David Fravor knows it. Yeah, he said that. Here it is.
And David goes, oh, yeah, that was, it had to be alien. I said, sir, with all due respect, that was how the Lockheed Skunk Works.
Really? That made the craft?
Yeah, that was one of ours.
And
he is now.
So because Fravor wouldn't say that now.
Oh, he did say so recently.
But in front of Congress, he says
he's been told since then. He's corrected. So I said, no, that came out of the Lockheed Skunk Works. It's one of ours. It was something that they did on purpose to see this global organization, to see how our military would react.
So you think that
And-
Tic-Tac was
Oh,
Lockheed
absolutely.
Skunk Works? Wow.
In the book we're going to give you, there's a very good account of it from 1967 over Pennsylvania, and we have a whistleblower who saw it being offloaded out of a big ship out of the in 1991, I believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's ours.
That was off. That was in.
And then
the
later,
Azores
very
in Portugal?
recently, a Lockheed executive admitted to David Fravor that was theirs.
Really?
But I knew that. I knew from the first time I saw it. I said, it was all over CNN. I go, that's not extraterrestrial. It's one of ours.
What?
Yeah. So this has been deeply, deeply contested. And this is where the meat of this story is, because I am starting to see, and I've already talked about this a little bit, both division and competition amongst people who are at the top reporting on this, i.e. Ross Coulthart, who is the subject matter today on today's video. And for example, Jeremy Corbell, Jay Stratton, George Knapp, all of that camp that are convinced and have repeatedly stated that the Tic-Tac is anomalous. It's not from Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. And there's a clear, evident disconnect there. And this is what some of the things that the secret keepers are hoping from us, that we disagree, that we get into conflicting statements games, that we discredit discredit one another. And at this point, I'm just going to show you something that Jeremy Corbell said a little while ago about this alleged information that Commander David Fravor got about the Tic-Tac being potentially Lockheed Skunk Works. And I just got to remind you this because it's important to what Ross Coulthart said today about the Tic-Tac. So here is Jeremy Corbell talking about this material or evidence that Commander Fravor was shown.
So I was talking with Commander Fravor the other day, and he shared some information that came to him that was just, email style. But George, it was passage material. And I don't know if people on our podcast know what that means, but sometimes in SAPs or special access programs, they have what they call passage material. It's material that is leaked to people. People try to hit us with this shit all the time, George, like false information as journalists, like they're going to use our mouths to their benefit. Little do they know we're good at our job. But the thing is that this material is being passed around to people like even Commander Fravor, where they're trying to kind of convince him that Lockheed Martin, as an example, had some sort of similar technology to what he saw. First of all, he laughed. He's like, if people knew my job right now, they would know that I know that is not true. So it was just, he said it to me as like an alert. Have you seen this before? And I said, I have. Do you understand what's happening, Commander? And he goes, I do. So basically, it's a really interesting story, and it has a lot of real information in it. But there is a core fake information in there. They call it passage material. It was eventually, I can backtrace it, reverse engineer it, where it comes from an agency. And I'm just going to say it, man. Why does the CIA have a completely different methodology of shaping the emerging UAP narrative compared to other good agencies? Like, there are some good people in the Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation, in the DOJ, as I said, even in the DOE, DIA, there are good people looking to give correct information. So I just want to tell you, there's passage material being pushed around within the UFO community, and people are being approached by individuals, and they're kind of like boasting about it. Shut your mouths. You don't even know who these people are. So I just want to kind of give that little hidden message to people. Careful who you talk with. There's people trying to give you fake information. You got a question, call Crazy Uncle Jeremy. I will let you know and give you the receipts and the documents, as the kids say, of what I know to be false information people are trying to get out into the media. So it's a weird time. It's an information warfare moment. This is a moment where 2024 is going to be defined by our human intelligence. It's going to be defined by our ability to separate the wheat from the chaff, as you say, and I say the bullshit from the truth. That 2024, we're going to have new hearings. We're going to have more congressional hearings.
Yeah. So that was that from Jeremy. This was early last year when he said this. And now Ross Coulthart, I showed you the drone stuff because I wanted to mention that first. I want your opinion on that. But Ross was also on Reality Check talking about what's allegedly happening to the firsthand whistleblowers that want to come forward and what is being told to them by the quote unquote secret keepers. So I'm going to show you this. Shout out to UAP James for clipping this one.
I'm talking to people in the legacy program who have been in the room when senior members inside the legacy program are telling them that they will be killed if they speak out about the program. There are threats being made to people to keep this secret.
And then let's go to the meat of it. And I'm going to use a tweet from Joe Murgia, because Joe has a direct line to people like Jay Stratton, George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, and all of those people. And whenever this specific topic comes out, he always asks them who were part of the OSAP program in the UAP task force. And they even made an extensive study on the Tic-Tac's physics. So they have studied the Tic-Tac quite a bit. And they all agree that the Tic-Tac is anomalous, is not from any aerospace company. The thing is, I don't know what's happening now because of what Ross just talked about. So here it is.
I now know categorically that the Tic-Tac is Lockheed Martin technology.
Okay.
That reaction from Bryce was natural. And that's where Bryce potentially does not agree, either with that or with the Chinese drones. I don't think he agrees. I don't know what to think about that, because I know that there's smoke, that people have talked about that forever. I know those alleged Ben Rich quotes from who used to run the Skunk Works, and I don't know who Ross is talking about. How he feels so secure saying this makes me think that he's talking to a Lockheed Martin top executive or an engineer from Lockheed Martin. It has to be somebody from Lockheed Martin. Now, that doesn't mean that whatever he's being told is potentially or necessarily true. I don't know what evidence he has to make those claims, but he's very certain. And then you have Jeremy Corbell talking about this passage material. I wonder, has Ross been shown passage material, or does he have direct contact with firsthand witnesses and people who handled this material? I wonder. So let's hear what he says.
The Tic-Tac is Lockheed Martin technology. Why are we being lied to? This is the issue. Why is the United States government now participating at White House executive level in collusion with the national security state to keep secret the fact that they've made these advances? I suspect it's because they've realized that they're being overtaken by their foreign adversaries, and they don't want you to know that.
Okay, the Tic-Tac is Lockheed Martin. Well, in some respects, given how insane the Tic-Tac behaved during the Nimitz, where it went from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second, then I would say, well, there's one for the U.S. team that obviously we have some good stuff out there, if that's the case, right?
Yes, but how much of that is being shared with the actual Defense Department that's responsible for the defense of the United States? This is the kind of questions that Congress should be asking.
I see what you're saying. So you're saying Lockheed Martin might, or anybody, but Lockheed Martin in this particular case has a Tic-Tac that they are testing and have been testing and have access to, but they might not have shared it with the Defense Department of the United States, which probably paid for it in their.
You see where this conversation is going? And it's really one of the most frightening hypotheses of all this is the breakaway civilization theory, which coincidentally, and I did not know this, the one who coined breakaway civilization as a term was none other than Richard Dolan in one of his books. And that is one of the scariest scenarios, because if all of the above is happening, if non-human intelligence is real, if these craft that were recovered were cracked, and some non-government entity managed to reverse engineer it and make a craft as fast as the Tic-Tac or even faster over decades, what do you think they have now? If the Tic-Tac happened 20 years ago plus, what do you think they might have now if this is true? But what I think is mostly going on is that Ross seems to be going towards this direction, and Jeremy Corbell and all of the people that are on his side, so to speak, on this debate, remain certain that the Tic-Tac is anomalous and is not Lockheed Martin's. So somebody is not telling the truth, and it's really difficult to find out who. Jeremy Corbell claims that whenever you have information about this stuff, you can call him and share it with him. I've tried sending emails. I've tried sending him messages, and he almost never really responds. He's never responded to me directly, really. And I don't know why. I don't know why he says that it's not that difficult to get a hold of him in order to share this type of information. Why is it difficult for people like me, for example? I mean, I'm going to keep trying, though, but I find that really curious. On the contrary, whenever I have wanted to share information or ask information directly, Ross always responds. Always. And he takes the time to do it. And I think that's very valuable of somebody like him. And no matter what you think about what he says, he's not linked to the government, which is, for me, a green flag, because technically the ones who are keeping this secret are people from the government. So he's Australian. He's not American. So that plays in his favor, in my opinion. And Corbell and Knapp are tied directly to people from the DIA. Some of the Knapp's books are directly written alongside people from the DIA. That's a direct link to a government entity, to a 3-letter agency, nonetheless. So that, in my opinion, in terms of the secrecy, plays against them. I'm not saying they're the ones keeping the secret or anything. I'm just saying I think they need to talk to each other more. And if you guys are going to be at the very top reporting on this, you at least need to have sort of like an order of how you're going to release things and what you're going to say, and have everyone else aware of it. And if there's a debate that needs to happen before this comes out, have the debate, talk to each other, I would say. But you don't. And that's the issue here. I think that there is a level of competition and narrative wars amongst the people at the very top that needs to end, and you guys need to reach a common ground whenever you have information, because clearly one of your sources, or maybe potentially even more, is lying to one of you. And it's impossible to tell who's lying to who if you guys don't talk to each other. So you need to talk to each other, because there's conflicting narratives all over the place. And what Ross talked about here is something that Dr. Stephen Greer has been talking about for a while. And I know that there's a lot of people within the UFO community who don't trust Dr. Greer. They don't like him, flat out. They don't like him. Yes, he has a difficult personality, as far as I've been told by people who interact with him. But the vitriol against people like him, and also on the other side, against people like Lou, is one of the main issues. And I think that's not helping the cause at all. It just helps feed the division. And we're seeing it in real time right now, because conflicting narratives with one of the most, if not the most important UFO case in history, and one of the best documented, is the Tic-Tac, is now being contested because of this difference in narratives, which is really, really disappointing. And just to be clear, Ross, what Ross is doing here is that he is indirectly calling out people like Corbell and David Fravor on what they have claimed about Lockheed Martin, denying that Lockheed Martin has this technology. And I just want to leave this really abundantly clear. When I saw Commander Fravor talking about his Tic-Tac encounter, that's what convinced me that something weird was going on with these objects. That feeling and that sensation towards Commander Fravor remains untouched. I still think that he experienced something weird, unexplainable, and anomalous with physics that we don't understand. I still think and feel that way. Now, whether that's Lockheed Martin's or another company's or anomalous, that still remains to be seen, because I have been talking to some of the people, for example, peripherally at Skywatcher, for example, who have been doing these tests, and they don't seem to agree either on whether the Tic-Tac is anomalous or not. When you ask them, they tell you, I asked directly, do you think this might be from an aerospace company? They're keeping it a secret. And they go, it's possible. I don't know. I lean towards anomalous, or I lean towards, but yeah, it's possible. And that should tell you everything you need to know about this division and difference of opinion. And it's just unfortunate. I'm just leaving you all the data here that happened over the last 24 hours or so you can make your own decision on who is being told the truth and who isn't. Because, yeah, Ross has said this repeatedly. A journalist is only as good as his sources. And I just wonder whose sources are the good ones and whose sources are the ones lying. Ross Coulthart's or Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp's? I don't know. But it's a good question to ask all three of them, I would guess. Let's continue with this exchange, which is really interesting.
$1 trillion budgets. That's kind of mind-blowing in itself.
Those are the questions I think Congress should be asking. I mean, what I'm saying basically is...
Why are you saying this, by the way? Where is this from? How do we know this? What's going on?
I'm sorry, Bryce, I can't go there. But
frankly,
he can't go there because he won't share where his source is coming from. And that's the key, I think. If it's somebody from a three-letter agency telling him this, I don't know how reliable that is. If it's someone from one of these aerospace companies telling him this, I guess it depends on the seniority of this person or how close this person was to the material itself. That would be the only two options that I think, or that is just not true and Ross is lying, which is also an option, to be honest with you. But I don't know if that's the case. I don't think that people this close to whatever is happening, Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, or Ross Coulthart, are purposely lying. I think that if they're saying stuff that is not true, the more likely explanation to that is that their sources are lying to them, not the other way around. But that's just my opinion. I don't know about you guys.
The only major row that you and I have ever had, which was over eminent domain and who can, is it not possible that legislation has eminent domain in it as an issue, that the government would be able to go seize potential things from private enterprise if the government, in fact, thought that Lockheed Martin had a Tic-Tac? Wouldn't we want to go seize it?
Bloody hell we would. And
yeah.
Right, exactly. But that hasn't happened. And, you know, I can tell you, David Grush has told them exactly where to look. Jake Barber has told them exactly where to look. This is why I just found it, in many ways, I find it absurd that we're still debating the issue whether the NHI technology recovery is real. Of course it's real. The issue is, the big issue we need to start confronting is, why is there a block, a log jam?
That may be because of this breakaway civilization theory, which is really scary. But that might be one of the reasons.
In Congress. Why won't Congress deal with this? The reason why is because it's not politically expedient to do so. And I'm beginning to increasingly think the reason why it's not politically expedient is because they don't want to admit it's another egregious screw up on a par probably far worse than 9/11.
This thing you just said about Lockheed Martin, is this the first time you've said that in public, or have you said that before?
Look, there's been speculation for a while that it's Lockheed Martin, but I'm now very, very sure that it was Lockheed Martin.
Okay, well, I know we're going to be
I think the Tic-Tac is part of at least two different platforms that Lockheed's been working on.
Okay, this one is really interesting too, because if you guys haven't read the Secret Machines books, the nonfiction ones written by Tom DeLonge and Peter Levenda, talk about this. And they don't necessarily mention Lockheed Martin, but Tom DeLonge, in many of his interviews, does allude to that one of the black triangles may be Lockheed Martin's. I guess this is the other platform that Ross mentions here, that Lockheed Martin also has an operational black triangle UFO. And yeah, if you guys haven't read those, you need to read those because they're really thorough and they get into all the different possibilities of what might be going on, going all the way back millennia to when the 3 Abrahamic religions were created even. So you guys need to take a look at those books. But I think this is what Ross might be alluding to.
Different platforms that they've been working on. And it's technology that until very recently, most of Congress was completely unaware of.
Well, I just hope if there's a war with China or a war with NHI, I just hope Lockheed Martin remembers who helped pay for it and they're on our side. That's
another one of the big ass, like, I don't understand why people would allow for one of these craft to be built with their tax-paying money and not make a ruckus when you realize that it's not being used to help out any Americans or humanity. This is potentially paradigm-shifting technology that is potentially being used with your tax-paying money if you're an American, and nobody has benefited from it except for potentially elites. So that alone should give you enough outrage to call your representatives and tell them what the hell is going on and demand for a further investigation. That is if what Ross is saying is true, because we've already discussed the difference in narrative between Corbell, Knapp, Jay Stratton's camp, and Ross's camp. And I don't know who's telling the truth. I think that a lot of this could be more clarified if somebody like, for example, Jay Stratton came forward. He hasn't come forward, and they still seem to be waiting for the movie to release while shit like this keeps happening. I don't know what you guys are waiting for, honestly, but Jay should come out and talk about this more openly. He's already talked a little bit about everything that he's been doing, but we need for that film to come out and for him to say everything he knows already, because stuff like this will keep happening. And that's how these so-called secret keepers, if they exist, want us to remain, just fighting each other and talking about different narratives and competing and without getting anywhere.
That's what I would say.
Well, I hope they are. I don't think we can have any expectation, though, unless the public demands answers, that we're going to get the truth. And I certainly don't think you're ever going to see a president stand up and admit any kind of truth about NHI until this.
I disagree with you there, my friend.
But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this. It's, I think, very significant because of these narrative wars that are clearly happening. What do you think about Ross going to different places, like saying that the drones are Chinese, like saying that the Tic-Tac is Lockheed Martin's? What do you think about Commander Fravor saying that it isn't, that he's certain that it isn't? What do you think about this passage material that Jeremy Corbell talks about? Do you think Ross was shown passage material? Or do you think he has firsthand knowledge of it by talking to one of these engineers or a top executive at Lockheed Martin? Let me know what you think, because this definitely could confuse a lot of people because of different people who are like involved in the UFO disclosure movement, who have been responsible for a lot of what's happened over the last 5 years or so, but now having completely different viewpoints of one incident, and the most important UFO incident ever, in my opinion, the Tic-Tac UFO. Let me know what you think. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear everything you got to say. I'll be looking and I'll be commenting. Thank you. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to help us, and it is what helps us the most. But if you want to support us in any other way, there's a few links down there you can choose from. You can become a member on YouTube, or you can support us through KGRA. KGRA actually helped us get all the podcast platforms filled with the Psicoactivo interviews. So you can go to any platform you want and you'll find it. Thank you for your support, as always. And that's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive, like Bryce Zabel asking questions to Ross. Always. Bye.